Happy Friday, May 7th, 2021. Welcome to the 3 Things I Learned in SaaS, Sports, Tech, and Live Events. Number 1, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? Right now, there's a lot of conversations about M&A, a lot of people joining new jobs, a lot of people launching new startups. When we launched our startup and we were talking to some equity investors, venture capitalists, one of them gave me a book by Noam Wasserman called The Founder's Dilemma. I'd skip the book, I'd read the summary, but in the book was a quote, do you want to be rich or do you want to be king? There's an entire chapter talking about equity rights and how to attract the best people. If you want to build a great company, you need great people, and great people need to be able to share in the bounty. It's really easy to try to hold on to that a little bit too tight and not let everybody else share in what would be an inordinate win at the end. When you're talking to your executive team, you're going to need to be clear and transparent to them about what kind of equity they're getting, whether it's new car, new house, or new life money at that point and what it'll look like in the future. Trust me, I learned the other way too. When you give away too much equity, that can be pretty painful, and I learned that pretty early. That's number 1. Number 2, nearly everybody wants to be a great leader, but not a lot of people want to do what it takes to be a great leader. You know, when we interview people for new gigs, or when we're talking to other leaders or investors or groups that are bringing us in to consult, almost everybody says they want to be a wonderful leader. And you ask them for an example and they can give 1 or 2, but they don't want to do the things that are necessary to be a great leader. We spent 3.5 years running this company, doing no study on leadership whatsoever, just trying to figure it out and using the leadership that we had seen in our lives, and we've been blessed with some really great leaders. It was a terrible failure. It wasn't until we understood that we had to get outside of our bubble, that we had to start reading leadership books, volunteering to coach, volunteering in the community, really starting to understand psychology and how people work and how to get people to follow when you have a vision, that it became a business that people would be interested in working for, and we started to see some exponential growth. Make certain that your leadership team's doing the same thing, that they're reading books, articles, or taking courses from people outside of the walls, outside of their families, and outside of their friend groups, because otherwise bad habits spread like a virus. And it's really difficult to learn about leadership from somebody who doesn't know anything about leadership. So that's number 2. And number 3, when should we terminate somebody when we have a question about them? It was a question that was asked to a room full of 50 CEOs in a private equity book that I'm currently reading that I wouldn't recommend. And the uniform answer was, as soon as you ask the question, I don't agree with that. I think you should look at your onboarding and recruiting process if, the first sign of adversity leads to termination. But the logic is generally sound that sooner is better than later. And that's hard to hear because most entrepreneurs, it's the hardest job for them, is terminating staff. And the hardest job is because it's a terrible thing to do for all parties. And it's always the entrepreneur's fault, without exception, when you have to terminate somebody. But the only thing worse than making a bad hiring decision, and by bad, I mean bad for everybody, is letting that continue. It's to nobody's benefit. I've never once heard somebody say that they didn't do it on time. Almost always, the answer is we probably should have made that move earlier in our best interest and in theirs. That's it for the 3 Things this week. We'll see everyone next week on the 3 Things.